Welcome to the original Gangsters Podcast. I'm your host, Scott Burnstein. Very special edition. We're going to be hitting two birds with one stone. We're going to do a kind of a life and crimes episode focusing on Joe Watts, Joe the German, one of the most powerful, respected mob associates probably in the history of Cosa Nostra, definitely in the Five Families. And as we do that, we're going to go to one of our primetime insiders, the consummate Renaissance man, former Gambino mob associate, former, Hall of Fame heist man, Lou Ferrante. Lou, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Scott. Appreciate it. Nice to be with you again.
And Lou was made his debut a year or two ago on OG Pod, and we talked about his books. I say Renaissance man, and this is like, it's not an exaggeration. Lou went from a life on the street as a young man, where he was doing scores all over New York City. If just for people that maybe aren't from that life, just imagine a real life Neil McCauley from Heat, or the character in Thief, both Michael Mann movies, by the way, Jimmy Caan, guys that were just professional thieves that took down scores, weren't guys that were violent or, knuckle dragger types. These were high IQ, heist guys that saw scores and took them down and did it very methodically, very organized, very buttoned up, and we're talking lots of money. And Lou lived that life. He went and did his time, kept his mouth shut, came out, and then just reinvented himself. And now he is a published author. How many books have you published? And not self-published. He's published through major book companies.
Yeah, quite a few. With the trilogy, I'm up to about 6 or 7. To be 7 with the last volume. I wrote A Theory of the Human Brain. I was just made an associate fellow of the Royal Historical Society. I'm proud to say, RHS. Yeah, it's wild. And when you said Heat, it's kind of funny you said that, because my attorneys once were in a lawyer visit, and my attorneys were trying to get me and my co-defendants a decent plea deal where we could cop global plea across the board, right, get it done, not try them, not take the government to trial and risk life sentences. And the agents at the time said these guys were like Heat. And I go, what do you mean? They go, Heat, the movie. That's who they're talking about. They said, right, you guys were the same as Heat. And that was the first time I heard that until now. Yeah, so that's kind of that's wild you said that. Yeah, it's wild you said that. Yeah, we did. I had some good guys though. We did some really major scores.
Just a different slice of organized crime, where it's more. I guess it's in organized crime, you have things that are very organized, and then you have things that are less organized. And this is a very organized aspect of organized crime.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Sometimes I was amazed at how many people. I'm away with everybody, and everybody's indictments are on the table. And I'm studying law at some point, and I'm helping a lot of people get time reductions and stuff. And the amount of murders, and I'm like, what are you killing? You guys are killing everybody. We can't just go make money. I remember I was with a dear friend of mine. We went to see his uncle once. His uncle owned a restaurant. He's dead now, I can tell you. His uncle owned a little restaurant in 5 towns, Viniasaro. And we were looking to shake down these guys. And he goes, what are you going to shake them down for? He goes, go rob your own money. He goes, he got aggravated with us that we were even trying, because he knew the guys. So we were going to ask him for the green light. And he yelled at us. He goes, go make your own money. So go out, make your own money, go hustle. You don't have to kill 1 million people. You don't have to steal with stairs, which actually brings me to Joe Watts and look, complete opposite of Sammy the Bull Gravano. Sammy the Bull killed all his friends. I don't know if you're aware, but I was on a couple of podcasts. I don't get into it with people. I happen to mention him. Maybe he was mentioned first. But he was a rat. He gave up a lot of people. And I don't watch his videos, but I remember somebody sent me the video with Joe Watts that he did. He did a video with Joe Watts when Joe Watts got out of the can.
He got out, I think,
a few years now.
4 years ago.
Yep. And when he got out, Sammy ran and did a video. So a friend of mine sent it to me. And he said, Lou, watch this. He's talking about Joe now. So first of all, the guy who sent it to me, dear friend of mine, tells me he's always lying. He's lying about his father all the time. Vic Arena Jr. stood up, did his time. Vic Arena is a man's man, tough as could be, honorable, left a life with honor. He could have stayed in that life. He left. And the father's doing life. The father's going to die in jail. It's a shame. He's got 30 years in already. So
from all reports, he is in very, very poor health and doesn't know where he is or who he is. So
he should be out. He calls Vic and he'll say, do me a favor and go buy a car for this girl. And Vic's like, that girl, he hasn't seen that girl in 30 years.
Right.
Or 40 years, go buy her a car. He's out of it.
Father time is undefeated.
Yeah, let him out. They don't want to let him out because he didn't cooperate. But so anyway, Vic told me, he goes, look, he lies about my father all the time. He makes stories up. I think he's even lied about Vic Jr. So I saw the Joe Watts video, and it was a complete lie. So he says, if you look at the video and you got any knowledge of how things work in the system, and you ever been investigated by the FBI, you've had dealings with them. He says two of the highest ranking agents alive at the time, flew down to the Supermax to tell him. First, he says they flew down, they came to talk to me, and they said, we're here to tell you something, but we can't tell you. So I says, well, if you're not going to tell me, I'm not going to talk to you. Well, we want to tell you, but we can't tell you. They just flew how many thousands of miles to not tell you? Are you serious? Is this a real story? You're listening to it and going, this guy's making it up as he goes. And the two agents, by the way, denied it. First of all, the government would never pay the agents' flights to go visit Sammy Gravano supposedly to tell them Joe Watts is a rat. That was his story, that they flew there to tell him Joe Watts was a rat.
Sammy is accusing Joe the German, Joe Watts, of being a cooperator.
Yes, and let me tell you another thing. First of all, I lived with Joe. Little Vic Arena was in this bed. I was in the next bed, and Joe Watts was in the next bed. We lived with each other for years. That's the three of us. We're literally like within 6 feet of space. We slept and lived every day with each other. So if there's two people in this world I know inside and out, so if I tell you Little Vic Arena is a man, if I tell you Joe Watts is a man, it's because I'm living with them 24/7. Right. If there's a chink in your armor, it's going to come out. There's no chinks in their armor, whether it's Vic or Joe. Zero chinks in their armor.
And so let me also just give people a quick 101 on cooperation. Cooperators don't do 20 years.
No, exactly. So it's a complete lie. And I was with Joe as he's fighting his case. Joe was fighting his case tooth and nail. He's got F. Lee Bailey coming up. He's got Jimmy LaRosa. He's got Shagel. He's got every big attorney. He's spending millions of dollars. He's running mock trials. If you're going to cooperate, all you do is pick up the phone and call the prosecutor. You save all your millions. You don't have to spend anything. So I'm listening to this, and he says they told me that Joe was a snitch. So I says he's a lying MF-er, this guy. It doesn't end. This guy's tongue has been, first of all, he used his tongue to kill how many people? He's always Machiavelliing somebody, whether it was Louis DeBono, Louis Melito. He's always using his tongue. He doesn't pull the trigger, by the way. 19 murders. I think he admitted to one. The rest of them, he's getting everybody killed with his big mouth, which is still going now, 80 years old. So he gets mad at me, by the way. Let me just divert for a second before we get back to Joe. It's like, oh, a liar. And the other thing I revealed, too, was Joe Butch. Joe Butch's stepson. I knew Joe Butch's son, Vinny, too. Vinny was a good guy. But I knew Joe Butch's stepson, Joey Boy. Joey Boy was a sweetheart of a guy, tough guy, honorable guy. To this day, many, many years later, he's a great person. Okay. I don't see him much now. I don't see him now, period. I haven't seen him in years. But as I know, I talk to people who know him. He's still the same sweetheart he ever always was. I was in and out of Joe Butch's house because I was close with the kid. I was always seeing Joe down in Little Italy. I would go to either Cafe Biondo or Taormina because I was with the kid. I'm not telling you I was dear friends. I was, with Joe Butch every day. He's a capo. I'm this kid's friend. But we went away to the Roslyn Ranch many, many years ago. And it was me, Joe Butch took us, me, Joe Butch, Joey Boy the Kid, and Peter Gotti was with us, Pete's son, Peter. And I was at a picnic table with Joe, and I'll never forget it. And I says, how's this Sammy? Because they just made Sammy the consigliere or underboss. How's this Sammy? I'm just asking. I'm talking to Joe. I could talk to him like that. I'm not getting, is he a nice guy? Is he? That's it. He's not going to tell me any secrets. We're on a different level. I get that. He says, he gives me a look rather, and he glares at me. And I knew, stay away from Sammy. He's giving me a message. When Joe Butch glared at me, I says, he's telling me stay away from him. I figured because I found out later he's a treacherous guy. Maybe he was giving me that message. Years later, I'm researching for my trilogy. And I'm doing my research for my books. It's in volume 3, where I talk about Joe Butch. I talk about Sammy, about John. And I urge your listeners, go out and buy volume 1 and 2. Don't just be a YouTuber who listens to things. Go read, do your research, and listen to the real facts, because I reference all of the sources like you do, Scott. You're one of my favorite historians. You do the same thing. If I call
give the names of the books so people.
Yeah, the Borgata trilogy. So one was Rise of Empire, Volume 1. Maybe you could put the links in too. Volume 2 is Clash of Titans, which I go deep into the Kennedy assassination, and Volume 3 is Autumn of Empire, which is the fall of the mob. That's the year of the rat. They're destroying the Rico rats. The thing is falling apart. So anyway, Joe Butch, I'm doing my research, and I didn't know when Joe Butch glared at me. And I wrote about this in my memoir 15 years ago. I wrote about this. I called Joe Artie the hairdo, because Joe had a big pompadour. He was a tall, handsome guy with a big head of hair. So I called him Artie the hairdo. That was my fake name for him. At the time, I didn't use real names. I was just fresh out of jail. Joe was still alive. He hadn't died yet. I don't think he was dead yet, because I even traded letters with Joe when he was in the federal hospital out in Minnesota, Rochester, Minnesota. I traded letters. If guys were coming by me, they brought letters from Joe Butch. If they were going back, I sent a letter to Joe Butch. So I was tight with him in my own way. So anyway, I'm researching now, and Joe Butch apparently approached John Gotti and said, I got an inside guy that says Sammy's a rat. Now, when Joe Butch does that, Sammy's the underboss, let's say, or consigliere, but let's say he's the underboss for argument's sake. You're risking your own life, and you're risking the life of your son, because if that backfires, you're dead.
Right.
Okay, so Joe Butch had to have a he had to be 1,000% sure when he approached John and said that, or he wouldn't have did it. Just think about that. Joe Butch survived his whole life on the street, not by making mistakes. Okay. And he was well-liked and well-loved and respected by everybody. So, in all families too. I talked to Vic Arena once. Vic says, Joe Butch, he goes, my father and him were Gumbadas, he says. I'll show you a picture. He's got a picture with little Vic Arena and Joe Butch when they were young together. He was close with all the families, and that's Colombo. Right. So now I read this and I says, wow, well, if Joe Butch approached John before Sammy became a rat, this is before Sammy becomes a rat. I mentioned this. I talked about it on either Vlad or one of those, or Julian Dory. If he approached John, he had to be 1,000,000% sure. On top of that, Joe Butch goes away for what? For having a mole on the inside feeding him classified information. And the mole is verified by the United States government the day they indict him and put him away for it. So he's getting good information. So when he approached John, now I go deep into why John ignored it. That's in my book, Volume 3 of the Borgata trilogy. You'll see in Volume 3, Autumn of Empire, I explain to you why I feel John ignored it. But he ignored it. And when he tells, finally, John approaches Sammy when Sammy's starting to break weak in jail, and he says, I saved your life. Joe Butch wanted, obviously Joe Butch wanted John to clip him when he told him. So he says, Joe Butch came to me and told me you were a rat. I didn't believe him. John was trying a last-ditch attempt at keeping him strong. It didn't happen. So whatever the case is, Joe knew something. Was it a one-off? Was he a top echelon informant? I don't know. But I mentioned this on an interview, and then Sammy comes after me. And somebody writes me. I don't know if you're aware of this. Somebody writes me a fan mail. And I get, by the grace of God, the books are selling. They're doing well. I get fan mails every day. I get a fan mail, and sometimes it takes me time to get back to the people because I'm doing things. I'm at my desk or I'm running around doing something else, and it takes me a little time. But eventually I sit down and I catch up with my fan mail. So one day I'm catching up, and some guy writes me and he goes, "Do you think Sammy the Bull is a liar?" So I write back. I said, "Look, he was who he was. We know that. That wasn't a lie. We know he was the underboss. We know he killed 19 people because he tells us every 3 minutes. Okay, we know all this. But he's now, I guess, part of the entertainment world where you got to fill the space." Right. And he keeps telling stories and he places himself in stories. Like I said, I was honest with you. I just said, did I know Joe Butch? I loved him. I loved Joe Butch like a father. Was I equal with Joe Butch? I'm not saying that. I never overplay my hand. Pete Gotti, I was in and out of his house every day for years. Did Pete Gotti love me? I think he did. The father, I'm told he did. I loved him. I was friends with the kid. And I became friends with the father.
It's a proximity thing. Like you just by being in proximity to these people, you're going to glean information and have relationships. Doesn't mean that you're, a lieutenant that's doing the dirty work.
I just want to make that ultra clear. But I'm still on the street and doing my thing, and I'm still talking to people. In other words, look, I was told twice. I had remember Joe Scafidi? He was the acting boss of the Lucchese family. He went sour. I had to sit once with him. I was told by Pete, you could go talk to the acting boss of the Lucchese family. I'm at a sit down. He says, you could speak with my voice. When I got there, I told Joe, he says, where's Pete? I said, Pete said I could come and talk to you myself. He kind of rolled his eyes and then said, okay, let's go. And I talked to him. I'm talking with an acting boss. And I won the sit, by the way. Also, Ronnie One Arm, who was he was a gentleman. Ronnie One Arm was always a gentleman. Ronnie One Arm, there was a beef over a hijacked load that I had. I had to go see Ronnie One Arm. Ronnie One Arm was defending the guy who had something to do with that load, the guy who gave me the tip. The tip I took the load. I put the load in my friend's yard. The yard got raided for something else, and we lost the load. So the guy's looking for the money. I go, we lost the load 5 minutes after we took it. That's like, I can't pay you if I didn't sell it.
Right.
Next time you give me a tip, I'll give you double. I'll make it back to you. But we lost the load. We're lucky the FBI don't got us. So, I tried to squash it. And then next thing you know, the guy digs up Ronnie One Arm. Ronnie One Arm, again, Pete told me, you go there, tell Ronnie it's okay. Ronnie and Pete were close. He says, tell Ronnie I said you could talk like you're me. I went and I had to sit down with Ronnie One Arm. We took a walk around the block. I told him the whole story. By the time we got back around the block, Ronnie says, with his good arm, he shook my hand, gave me a kiss, and says, you don't have to worry about this again. I go, thanks, Ron. I appreciate it. So I'm around everybody. I'm just saying I don't want to overplay my hand. Because I get it. Sammy was the underboss, but he's a rat. He's still a rat. When I went away, I went away. And that's the end of it. Whether I was the underboss, the soldier, an associate, I didn't care. You got to go away, you go away. So Sammy must have got aggravated because I said Joe Butch outed him as a rat. He must have been before. And I'm telling you, Joe Butch wouldn't have said that. Maybe you should do a FOIA request. Maybe you should do a deep dive into what he was doing before he became an official rat. If he was a top echelon informant, even a prosecutor like John Gleason wouldn't know. John Gleason would indict him, not even knowing he's a TA.
Yeah, for people, let's just do a little bit of inside baseball for people that might not understand the way that informants are operated. You're given a number. Nobody, the only person or people that know who CI 10B37 is the person that's operating the informer or the informant, and possibly that person's supervisor. So there are meetings taking place where FBI agents are sitting down with other FBI agents, even in their own squad, in their own investigative squad, and they're saying, my CI says this. They're not saying, Joe Smith is saying this. They're using veiled.
That's right. So they wouldn't. So John Gleason indicts him. He wouldn't have even known.
Right.
If he was a TA, top echelon informant, he would never even known. So now Sammy would have been pushed to either now become an active informant where he takes a stand, or just get stuck on the case. It happened with Scarpa. When Scarpa started getting indicted, Scarpa goes, "Oh, I'll testify. I didn't want to testify for the last 30 years, but now I will," because he wanted to get out of jail. So that's your choice once you're stuck, because it could backfire, and it backfired. And
you can be, whatever happened with Sammy before. I mean, the fact is that he did officially cooperate in 91 and testified in 92. But there are.
So was it a shock to us that he's a rat? That he could have been a rat before he was a rat? Right. He's a rat as a rat.
And there's endless possibilities for dry information, which means people are given information, and if it works out in their favor, it will never reach the light of day. They'll just be. So I've heard from really, really good sourcing, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but in the 1990s, I've been told by people very high up in federal government that there were at least 3 bosses, I'm not just saying New York, across the coast to coast. There were 3 bosses, at least 3 bosses that were top echelon.
I got to tell you, to the FBI's credit, they cracked the mob. Let's be real. They cracked the mob. It doesn't. Autumn of Empire, my 3rd volume of my book, is about how they cracked the mob, and it's over, and how the mob cracked itself.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you too, one of the biggest catalysts. Sammy likes to say, "Oh, it was John Gotti and his big persona and his big mouth and his this and his that." I got to tell you, John Gotti will come and go if the structure stays. You could have a bad president of a country or a bad prime minister of a country, but the system is in place that the founding fathers put in place. And whether you like Biden, whether you like Trump, whether you like Bush, whether you like Obama, or whether you hate them all, they'll come and go. And the system will remain intact. And that's how the Mafia is, where John would have came and went. Paul Castellano came and went. Paul Castellano was greedy. Paul Castellano didn't care about nobody. He didn't worry about his soldiers. He went. John Gotti would have came and went. What destroys it is a guy goes, "I'm going to give up all my friends, 30, 40 people. I'm going to testify at everybody's trial." And then everybody starts going, "I had 6 murders and Sammy got 5 for 19, so I only deserve 3. I had 4 murders. I had 12 murders. And they're all trying to get the same. Every single guy went in. Little Al Diarco, Gas Pipe Casso, Fat Sal Majorta. Everybody went in and says, "Give me the deal Sammy got."
What about Joe Massino, the first official godfather of a New York family to turn?
I go deep into Joe Massino.
Yeah.
Because that I uncovered a lot of stuff that nobody's ever heard about Joe Massino. That's coming in the 3rd volume. Yeah.
Let's go. I don't want to lose sight.
No. Let's go back. So
Joe Watts.
Before I jump to Joe Watts. So Joe Bush was onto something. Now Joe Watts, right? Joe Watts was one of the. First of all, I can't say enough good things about him, Joe. I'm going to tell you what kind of a guy Joe was. Okay. So first of all, on that little stupid video he said when he labeled Joe Watts a rat, you say to yourself, okay, why did he label Joe Watts a rat? What would be his motive? And he says, well, he was looking to kill, at the end of the video, he was looking to kill my son. So he and then I was put the kibosh on it. I think he said Joe Bellotti put the kibosh on it or something, which wasn't true either. Joe would never have killed his son, first of all. Joe never killed a kid. The only person who killed the kid, that is the one who's talking. He killed that, what's his name, Alan Kaiser, when he was a kid. Sammy did. Sammy killed the kid. Joe Watts never killed a kid and never would kill a kid. So what did Joe Watts do? Joe Watts, when I was with him, back then when we were living together, I told you, Little Vic Arena, me, and Joe, the 3 of us were 6 feet apart. Joe Watts had John McNally, the private eye, legendary private eye, private investigator. And he says, go find, by the way, rats don't pay John McNally to dig up dirt on their rats. He's not a rat, Joe, period. Joe went and hired John McNally. John McNally was the guy who uncovered not only that there were more bodies that Sammy didn't talk about. Not only that, he put a whole bunch. John McNally uncovered more dead people that Sammy never talked about for whatever reason. They were maybe involved with drugs, maybe involved with whatever. John McNally uncovered, why did Sammy in his memoir talk about that he was a beautician? He says he went to beauty school. He says, I was a beautician. Yeah, I went to beauty school. But he goes, I did it to pick up girls. I've been around a long time. I was high testosterone kid. You don't pick up girls, with a curling iron in your hand, and blow drying some old lady's hair. That's not how you pick up girls. They're not into that type of guy. He wanted to be a beautician. Now, that's fine. Anybody's out there, you're a beautician, that's fine. I've had a beautician at my house, a male beautician. He's welcome. He's my friend. But Sammy wanted to be a male beautician, and he went to beauty school. And the only reason he put it in there in his book and admitted it was because Joe Watts uncovered it through John McNally.
There's a motive for Sammy to...
This is his motive for not...
Joe Watts.
Joe Watts went deep into his personal life. And Joe Watts not only found out that he went to beauty school before he was going to beauty school. He graduated beauty school. Then he walked into the movie theater and saw The Godfather. And somewhere while eating buttered popcorn and watching the big screen, he decided to drop his curling iron and his scissors and pick up a stiletto and a 45.
Yeah.
And that's sort of like when the change occurred. Okay.
Let me just for the...
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to say, no, the other thing was with Joe Watts. Joe Watts was so liked, he tried to say that Joe Watts was walking around prison paying the Spanish to protect him. I was in prison with Joe. Joe never paid a nickel to nobody for nothing. Joe was generous. Joe was very generous. I had a lawyer, Charlie Carnisi, who got a lot of people he represented after me. But before he represented me, he represented Joe Watts. Joe Watts recommended Charlie Carnisi. I already had William Kunstler. I briefly had Barry Slotnick. I had some of the best lawyers money could buy. I was flush. Spend it. You can't use it in jail, or you could buy his commissary. Who cares if this costs millions? Go for it. So I had the best lawyers money could buy. William Kunstler drops dead. Slotnick had to come off the case because he briefly represented one of my snitches. So I went through 7 other attorneys. Joe Watts says to me, why don't you try Charlie Carnisi? I go down on a visit. I'll give you an idea what a man Joe was. And rats don't do this. Rats only worry about what they could get and what they could keep before they become rats. Mm-hmm. Joe goes, go down on a visit. Go see Charlie. I said, all right, I see Charlie Carnisi. I like everything Charlie had to say. I go, listen, Charlie, I'm going to tell you what to do. You're going to get in touch with this guy. He's going to give you the money. I had friends who were holding money for me. I says, he's going to give you a retainer, and you come in on the case, and then you're going to work with this one, and then we'll get rid of him after this. And okay, he goes, but you're already retained. I said, what? He says, Joe Watts sent somebody to my office this morning. You're retained. I said to Joe when I got back to the jail, I go upstairs. I go, Joe, you retained Charlie Carnisi for me? He goes, yeah, you're a good kid. He goes, Louis. He goes, you're a dynamite kid. He goes, anything I could do for you. I'm not protecting Joe.
Right.
Joe's not paying me anything because he needs protection. He's my friend. The most generous guy you could imagine. When Joe went to the state, I'll tell you another story about Joe that nobody knows. When Joe went to the state, it was either the Tommy Spinelli murder or the Jeffrey Chacon murder.
Tommy Sparrow.
Yeah. Tommy Sparrow or the Jeffrey Chacon, the one who took a pop shot at John. It was one of those murders he had to go to the state for, so he left us. I gave him my father. I'm going to tell you about my father too, what Sammy said about him. I gave him my father's number. I said, Joe, do me a favor. Call my father. Let us know how you're doing. The day he got acquitted, he called my father. I called my father that night. I says, Dad. He goes, yeah. He says, your friend Joe Watts called from the state. He's ecstatic. He says he beat the case. You should see it in the papers tomorrow. I turned around. I says, hold on, Dad. I announced to the jail. Now, this jail, you got 125 guys on this block.
Right.
You got black, you got Spanish, you got Italian, you got Asian, everything. I says, hey, guys, Joe Watts beat the case. You heard 125 guys screaming and yelling and cheering.
It was like the Yankees won the World Series.
It was like the Yanks won the World Series, okay? I got locked up when the Rangers won the Cup. It was like that.
94.
It was like, what the whole place, even the guards were cheering. The guards, the hacks are going, yeah, Joe. So I go, Dad, do me a favor. When he calls back, if he calls back, let him know everybody's cheering him. We all love him. Give him my love. Hung up the phone. That's how much Joe was liked. And let me tell you something. He fought his case tooth and nail. He spent millions of dollars fighting it. I was there. I know particulars on his case I probably shouldn't talk about because I was living with him. But I got to tell you, I know a lot about his life I can't talk about. By the way, I'll tell you a little fact that I could talk about. He's not even German. He says,
I was going to say, before you do that, let me just, we're going to do this episode for people that have consumed our life and crimes episodes. We're doing this one a little bit more organically, and it's a little bit inverted. So I want to, we're a half hour in. I want to make sure people have a little bit of a bio of him, and that will play into what you were about to say. So I'm just going to try to do 2-3 minutes, and then you to chime in about the history of Joe Watts, Joe the German. As you said, his dad was like half Welsh, half German.
Yeah.
And his mom.
I go, why are you Joe the German then? He goes, Louis. He goes, I always thought, I always heard of you as Joe the German. When this is like, he goes, Louis. He goes, these idiots don't know. He goes, what a Welshman is? They don't even know where Wales is, these people. He says, like, in other words, the mob guys he's around. Right. He goes, Joe the German? That's fine. I'm Joe the German, he says. But yeah, from where?
His mom was Italian.
His mother was Italian. He was related to the actress, the one who played the Graduate, where the woman, the older lady, there's a picture, she lifts her leg and puts her stockings on.
Yeah.
He was related to her somehow, I think on the mother's side. Annabelle something. No, Anne Bancroft, his name is Annabelle something. She's really Italian. Anne Bancroft he's related to. She's really Italian. Yes.
So Joe the German was originally in the Castellano camp, huge earner, huge loan shark, who made a deal with the Gotti faction to jump ship and help them take out Castellano. He was not a trigger man in the Castellano hit, but was on the hit team, I believe, as a backup shooter.
I believe. Go ahead.
Good. Well,
No. I was saying they got him down as a backup shooter, and what he would have been. So Frankie DeCicco was going to become the underboss. He would have been Frankie DeCicco's insurance. Make sure if these guys drop the ball, somebody's there that I love.
Frankie DeCicco was a Castellano guy that came over to the Gotti side, and then from this isn't a secret. This was in some of the court filings. As reward or as incentive, the promise to Joe the German or Joe Watts was that if you come and help us with this palace coup, we'll give you Tommy Bellotti's rackets, his bookmaking, his shylocking. Tommy Bellotti was Paul Castellano's right-hand man, his driver. For about 2-3 weeks, he was underboss in between Neil Della Croce dying and then Bellotti and Castellano being gunned down in front of Sparks Steakhouse. And then another thing I want to, I guess, give credit for, because I guess in a world of violence, when people upend the possibility of life being lost, I think that deserves some some credit. And I know that there was talk after the Castellano Bellotti hit that Gotti had to get rid of Tommy Bellotti's brother, Joe Bellotti.
Right. Joe saved his life. Sammy tried
to saved his life. Right.
100%. Joe told me that story. Joe saved Joe Bellotti's life 1,000,000%.
Yeah.
And I think Sammy tried to take credit for that at some point and told somebody told me, he said on a video, or he said in one of his books, that he saved his life, that Sammy stood up and said, no, we can't kill. It was Joe Watts. He puts himself in a lot of places where he wasn't. The other thing too is, if you think about it, why wasn't, if he was such a big killer, I killed 19 people. You got four lead shooters and you got 4 backup shooters on the street. You got 8 guys, right? Why isn't Sammy on the street? Why is he sitting in the baby seat in John Gotti's car? What's he doing in that? Isn't
there some speculation now more
that he wasn't there?
that maybe that he wasn't there at all?
Yes. So this is what I heard from different people, okay, from people who are in the know. If he's such a killer, why ain't he on the street? Why didn't they use him as one of the guys, the gunman on the street? So he could say, well, I knew Paul. Paul might spot me. Paul might know me. Paul knew every face on that street. Right. And especially you're going to say you didn't know Joe Watts. Joe Watts was in and out of Paul's house every week.
All the time. Right.
There's pictures of Joe sitting at the kitchen table with Paul and Frankie DeChico. So you're going to say he wouldn't notice Joe, but he'd notice me? Why ain't he on the street? Why doesn't he have a gun on the street?
This is, again, a little bit of inside baseball, but I'm interested in it. I thought I knew this, but maybe I'm not exactly sure on the details. Who was in the restaurant? Was Frankie DeChico and Jimmy Brown?
I'm going to tell you who was in. So this came from a friend of mine. A friend of mine was their family with Neil Delacroix. Okay, their family. I still see him. He's a dear friend of mine. The one I'm talking about, there's a bunch of brothers. Their father got clipped many years ago. He's a good guy. His father died. They went to Neil. They said, Neil, can you figure it out? Can you help us? They asked Neil for help. They're friends of the family, Neil's family. Apparently, it was a sit-down over Armand Delacroix, Neil's kid. It was something to do with that. What's
Buddy.
that?
They called him Buddy.
Buddy, right. Apparently, he told me, Lou, it had something to do with Buddy. And he told me everybody who was there, because he was in the know, he dropped Buddy off that day at the restaurant. The guy I'm talking about, that I can't say because I didn't talk to him about this beforehand.
It's all right.
Yeah. I'd ask him if I'm ever on a future thing with you. I'll ask him if I could.
Don't worry.
He dropped Buddy off, and he said it had to do with something with Buddy. And he told me, and that was what the gist of the sit down was over. There were other things they were going to talk about. Jimmy Brown was there. They would have probably talked about garbage. Who knows? Tommy Gambino was coming. Maybe they would have talked about the Garment Center. Who knows? But whatever the case is, Frankie DeChico never made it to the restaurant because I don't think he had to. I think he got there at the last second. Okay. And I think he was there as they were coming out. Whatever the case is, there's some skepticism as to if he was there. He might have been there, Sammy. But if he was, guys are telling me he wasn't. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt on that one, just for argument's sake. If he was, why wasn't he on the street with a gun? I wouldn't have even allowed that. I would have said, all those guys are on the street with a gun. Give me my Russian hat and my Cossack jacket or whatever, and I'm going on my trench coat, and I'm going on the street too. Yeah. These guys, I'm not going to sit in the car while this happens. What am I, a pansy? Get me out there on the street with these guys. I would have never allowed that.
This is a bit of an aside, but I've been to a lot of great steakhouses in New York. I've never been to Sparks. I've been in front of it, but I've never been inside. I've never had a meal there. What's your? Is it just a place that people want to go because of that assassination, or is it a really good restaurant?
No, it's good food. No, it's great food. Yeah, I mean, that's what made it probably more famous and stuff. But Sparks is a great steakhouse. They didn't. I thought so, at least. I don't know. I'm not a big connoisseur. But yeah, I'm not Mr. Steak, but I'm telling you, I ate there quite a few times. It was great. Yeah.
When your interactions with Joe Watts, I mean, anybody that ascends to the level that he did when you're not a made guy. I mean, there has been a handful of guys, not just in New York, but in others. I would say a handful in each family. I would say where there are guys that are not full-blooded Italians,
right?
That become the de facto equivalent of a made guy. They have the stature and the ear of the administrators, and they're treated sometimes better, and they're given more power than a made guy.
I'll tell you something that I know. I could talk about these things just so your listeners know. I never ratted, and the things I talk about now could never put anybody in jail. I never took a stand. I'm never going to say anything now that could hurt somebody. And
just for people to know, Joe Watts is out of the game. He's
out of the game.
Years old.
Yep, I know he is. I talked to Matty Mara a while ago. He's out of the game. Joe's done. So, is it Matty Mara? Who's the attorney? What's his name again?
I'm not sure.
Yeah. So anyway, I reached out to him when Joe came home. He goes, Lou, he's done. So I says, I just give him my love. So this is something that, again, I just want to make sure I preface that with so your listeners know.
Yeah.
I never ratted. I'm not ratting now. I'm not giving up nothing. But somebody at the very top told me they wanted to straighten Joe out. And what they were gonna do is they had a meeting. It's like a quasi commission meeting where they were gonna straighten Joe out because Joe's half Italian, and each family was gonna get a half Italian guy. So, for example, the Colombo family, Junior Persico would have did Hughes McIntosh.
Right, Hugh McIntosh.
Okay, so Hughes McIntosh would have been their guy. Joe Watts would have been the Gambino guy, and so on across the board. I think it got knocked down by Chin's guys, by the West Side. I don't think they wanted to take that step and start because they figured then where's it going to end. Right. But they did talk about each family getting one, and that nobody knows. Nobody's ever talked about that. Never been written. This is directly from a source that told me that. And the only reason I could say it is because nobody's going to know who it was, and it's not a crime to want to straighten Joe out 50
by
years
the way,
later.
It's also not a crime. This sometimes gets lost in translation, and it sounds, to the naked ear that maybe doesn't know the law. Being a made member of the Mafia is not a crime. Being inducted into the Mafia is not a crime. Doing something in furtherance of becoming a member of that crime family that you're being inducted into is a crime and can be part of a conspiracy. But just taking an oath and being inducted into the mob in itself, there's nothing illegal about that.
That's right. Yeah. So Bobby Kennedy, I talk about it in volume 2 of the Borgata trilogy. When Bobby Kennedy was Attorney General, he wanted to make it a crime just to be a member of organized crime. And the lawyers that were in the Justice Department at the time, they were around this big table, and they all sighed and says, "Are you out of your mind? Where will that end? Right. Then you're going to be arrested for being a member of the Communist Party. You'll be arrested for being a member of the right-wing party. You'll be a member of, and it'll never end." So they says, we can't do that. And they shut it down on Bobby. But Bobby wanted to do that. He wanted to make it a crime just to be a member. And that, like you said, we live in America where we still retain a lot of individual rights. And one of the rights is to belong to any organization you want. And that's not a crime. What you do as a member of that organization may be criminal. Right. And that's where the crime comes in. That's a good point, Scott. Nobody knows that.
It's interesting, too, that you just mentioned. It's a great piece of unknown intel. I hope that the audience appreciates about you letting us know that there were conversations about possibly changing the rules in the 5 families to maybe let in half Italians and do it for, all the families can have a guy that's half and half. The guys because we do a lot of reporting on Canada with our OG podcast, and I'm not telling you or probably other people stuff that they don't know. The Rizzuto crime family was at one point a satellite wing of the Bonanno crime family, so was a part of American LCN. For the last 25, 30 years, they have not been. They have broken off. Vito Rizzuto took the Montreal Mafia away from the Bonannos. And in doing that, he created his own rules. And I believe there's been wiretaps of people talking about this that were in the know, people that claim to have gotten buttons that weren't Italian. And I've been told that even in the last 5-6 months, with Vito Rizzuto's son, Leo Rizzuto, facing their version of racketeering is called gangsterism, facing a gangsterism and murder case and trying to keep everything stable on the ground. He has made non-Italians as so again, you talk about a slippery slope. I think it went from, and I'm not judging this one way or the other.
No. I'll tell you another thing they changed too, which is a big deal because it changes like the law. The law is a living thing. I studied law. I reversed one of my own cases. Yeah. And I helped other people reverse cases pro se from jail. So I understand the law. The law is a living thing that changes over time. Right. That's why we could have, what's that?
It's fluid.
It's fluid, right? You're a lawyer. That's why you could have an amendment to the Constitution that does away with slavery when people realize it's wrong. Finally, they should have realized it before, but they didn't. Whatever the case is, they finally got their nuts up and got rid of it. That happens whether it's a woman's suffrage, whatever it is. So the Cosa Nostra, people don't realize that changes too over time, which is very interesting.
It evolves.
It evolves, exactly. And
in Canada, just to I'll throw it back to you in a second. It was a slippery slope that now, let's say it's 20 years after the idea, or 25 years after the idea that Vito Rizzuto put into action, which is we're no longer a part of La Cosa Nostra. We're going to create our own rules and regulations. And if I feel like a guy like Renaud Desjardins or a guy like Joe Bravo, who are the two guys who were mentioned on Wires about getting buttons, even though they're not Italian, if I feel like it's good for my organization, I'm going to okay it.
I'm doing it. Yeah.
But it's a slippery slope because now, and again, I'm not saying this is good or bad. The Rizzutos are, they're their own little crazy, fascinating thing. But it went from, I think, one or two guys to now where it becomes more of a trend, and there's more of a means to an end. And if Leo Rizzuto is saying to himself, hey, I'm locked up, I might be facing 10, 15, 20 years in jail right now. I want to have guys that I feel most comfortable with representing me on the street. And if so be it, they're not Italian, I don't care.
Right. So here's another, I totally get it. Here's another thing that changed. So when I was away, before I went away, if you were in jail, you couldn't get straightened out. While I was away, there was a Lucchese guy. He was doing 25 years. And before Gas Pipe flipped, Gas Pipe straightened him out.
Mike Spinelli?
Yeah, I didn't want to say his name. Mike was a good guy. You said it. Mike was a good guy. Yeah, he was. That's it.
It's interesting, and I'm going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here. And
I don't know if he's alive, if he's active, nothing. I don't know. So
I'm just going to talk about what he's in prison for.
Okay.
He actually, this is a crazy world that you lived in and that I report on, and sometimes there are connections between cities and families that you wouldn't expect. But the guy that Spinelli killed, that got him in prison, was a Lucchese associate named Sammy the Arab, who was from Detroit. And a lot of it had to do with the Pierre Hotel robbery back in the 70s.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and Sammy the Arab keeping some of the money that should have been going to Christy Tick. And when Christy Tick took power and Vic and Gas took power, they were kind of eager to look for a reason to kill Sammy the Arab.
With a million other people. They were killing everybody. Yeah.
Right. And Spinelli was the trigger man on that. And I'm actually, over the years in my reporting out of Detroit, I've become close to some of Sammy the Arab's family. So it's all a big circle.
Big circle, yeah. Big circle. So Mike, from what I understood, because I was with Mike at the time, from what I understood at the time, he was the first guy like that. They made a new rule.
Yeah.
Now, from what I heard recently, is a few other guys got straightened out.
Yeah, Vito Guzzo allegedly in Danbury with my best friend Ralph DeLeo doing the ceremony. I joke because Ralph DeLeo was trying to kill me back in the spring. I had the FBI at my doorstep telling me that in addition to the prosecutors and judge and FBI agent that Ralph DeLeo was trying to clip, he had located me in my car and was trying to send somebody out to Detroit to hurt me because I know this is, I'm digressing here.
I don't know. I didn't know him, but do it now.
He's a Boston guy. He was a Boston guy that became the boss of the Columbos because he was close to the Persicos. Nonetheless, according to the BOP, Vito Guzzo was made by Ralph DeLeo in Danbury at some point in the last 10 years. Vito Guzzo just got out. Ralph DeLeo just went back in because of these threats that he was making towards feds and judges and myself. It's surreal. Sorry.
Yeah, no. So the point I was making is kind of like the law could change, and not everybody knows that. They think it's like etched in stone from the beginning of time, and this is how the mob works. But it changes as it goes. Like you said, the law is fluid, and Cosa Nostra law is the same thing.
I want to throw one more thing out as we wrap up here, and I don't want to position this as I'm defending Sammy, but it's something that I want to just put out there. And it's more of a indictment of the government to a degree. I know that the government will lie to people, whether they be somebody that is a cooperator or a former cooperator. They will take things out of context. They will misuse terminology. Is it possible? And after I pose the question, I want to just give a quick explanation, and I'm going to throw it back to you. Is it possible that FBI agents went and visited Sammy, told either A, lied to him about Joe the German being a cooperator? Because if I've learned anything in my 20 years of reporting here, the government sometimes can be worse than the mob in terms of a vendetta or in terms of trying to jam people up and stick it to people.
Absolute power.
And in that, I've seen situations where you have 302s written up because of a non-confrontational conversation that happens between a surveillance agent and a target, where the target is just being congenial. And
what's the motive though for them to tell Sammy that he's a rat? Like if they're lying, even if they're lying, what's their motive?
I don't know. I guess this is again more of a,
yeah. That's so.
I'm saying though that I've seen situations where there's 302s written up, and if you're looking at the 302 and you have no context, you're thinking that the name on the 302 is a cooperator, when in reality the FBI agent went back to his office after he had a friendly conversation with his target, just talking about the Yankees game last night. And because there was any type of communication, even though it wasn't cooperation, it's written up in a 302.
So here's what I think of that. I get what you're saying, and that happens. I've been around guys where there's mistakes, where guys complained and they feel like they've been misrepresented. I've seen prosecutors lie like you can't imagine. We all felt like we're public enemy number one. I would say they got enough on me. Why do they have to lie? I couldn't believe why are they lying? I would say they don't need to lie. Even John Gotti, you got his tape, you got him on tape in the apartment, the Cirillo apartment. He's going on and on and on for hours. Why did they lie? They lie. That's what they do. They come in every day. You don't need to lie. You don't need to throw Bruce Cutler off the case and pretend he's the counsel for the
consigliere of the Gambinos.
Exactly. And how about this? He's thrown off the case because he's the consigliere of the Gambino family, but you're allowed to come back after the trial and represent him at sentencing. Wait a second. Shouldn't he be in jail then?
And he's allowed to go to Philadelphia to represent Georgie Borghese and come to Detroit and represent Tony Gianconi.
I interviewed him in jail. Pete Gotti sent Bruce Cutler up to see me. And by the way, because I'm a short guy, he's looking around for me in the visiting room. And then he sees me and he goes, "Big Lou?" I go, "Yeah." he goes, I go, "You didn't know?" He goes, "I just imagined you to be a lot bigger in stature." Yeah. So, but anyway, that's
and again, I know I'm going... this going down some rabbit holes in this episode, but it's something I feel strongly about because I've been duped by some FBI agents in the past. Because when I first started in this reporting gig, I think a lot of the public, I look at I looked at the government as beyond reproach. Like if it's coming from Uncle Sam, they've got to be righteous and they've got to be good-hearted and they've got to be telling me the truth. And that's really far from the truth. Yeah. And Al Bruno, the Genovese mob skipper out in Western Massachusetts. Now, granted, he probably should not have had as long of a conversation with an FBI agent as he did, but he was not an informant. He was talking shop with an FBI agent, which he probably shouldn't have been, lamenting the fact that when he had been in prison, they had made a guy that he didn't like, but he was not a cooperator.
I learned.
And that was and then that 302, which would make it seem like he had been opened up as a CI, was being shown around New York as proof that he was a CI, and they clipped him over it.
Yeah. Well, that's why. So from when I was young, I was taught, I mentioned all the old timers I was around. I was taught that you just never talk to them. You be polite. They ask you to get against the wall, get against the wall. They ask you to cough up, but don't talk to them. You don't have to tell them anything about yourself. You don't have to engage them in conversation. So that was the way, that was what I lived by. And to this day, I never had a single conversation with them until after. Now I'm done. I know FBI agents now, but while I was going through all that, until I left prison, I never had a single conversation.
Why give anybody the ammunition, right? Like
never, not a word. There's nothing to talk about. They even got mad at me because I was resistant when they were even like fingerprinting me and stuff because, like name, I don't want to talk. Birth, I don't want to talk. And then I finally, it took them a while to just pry my name and birth. How about this? When I went for my plea, when we finally all took a global plea, I go in and I cop to one hijacking on the indictment, and they're going to drop all the rest. The judge reads the thing and he says, on such and such a date, this guy and this guy committed this hijacking. And I go, I refuse to take the plea. This is all of my transcripts. I got them somewhere buried in my house. I go, I refuse to take the plea. The judge goes, what's going on here? You accepted this plea. It's the attorney. Did he accept this plea? Yeah. What's going on? I says, I refuse to say anybody else's name on the plea, on the plea allocution. So my lawyer, the prosecutor goes, what if we say him and his Confederates? Will he accept that? So the lawyer goes, Confederates, you all right with that? I go, what the fuck this got to do with the Civil War? I didn't know what a Confederate was. I didn't know a Confederate just means your friend. This is like, I had a whole education to give myself years in jail. But before that, I had no idea. So I go, what do you mean my Confederates? He goes, it just means your friends, your cronies, your guys. I go, then that's fine. So they redid it. And he goes, do you accept the plea for you and your Confederates? And I said, yes, I accept it. I'm guilty. Only my name. So that's how I was taught. It's very old school, but that's the way I was taught. And that's the way I lived by. Let me go back. Really, Scott, this is important. If I could just get this in. Yeah. So Sammy didn't like what I said about him. So Sammy, this guy who sent me that email, to go back to the top of this conversation, the guy sends me the email. I says, look, he is who he was. I get it, but he lies as he goes. He's lied about friends of mine. I was in Chin's house for many, many years. I'm dear friends with Rita for almost 35, 40 years now. We're going on.
Yep.
We're friends with her. Talk to her today. I love Rita. I know everything about
Rita's been really good to me. She came on my show. You guys have both lived I say it all the time, but it's true. You guys have both lived a movie script times 10.
Yeah. And so Rita, we were like the best of friends back then. At one point, I'm going, her father wants to clip me, and because he finds out I'm with John's crew, and he's getting mad, He's telling the mother and the daughter, what's going on with this guy in the house, this and that. I says, tell him you're a lesbian.
Which she is, and that's fine.
Yeah. Oh yeah, she is. She is, and I love her. I don't care what she is. I don't care who. I love her wife.
Yeah.
The point I'm making is, to save my life, I go, tell him you're a lesbian so he doesn't think I'm fooling around with his daughter. So she goes, I told him. He said, it's just a phase I'm going through. He doesn't believe me. I said, well, let's make sure he knows we're just friends. So P.S. I said to Rita, I go, look, Sammy said about your father in court when he came to testify to put Chin away for life. He says, or 12 years, which turned out to be life.
Yeah, it ended up being the end of
He died in jail.
A lot of people don't know that he was gonna come out.
Oh, he would have been out.
They jammed him again. So instead of coming out in like 3 or he was gonna come out in 3 or 4. He died in 5.
The reason why though they jammed him again was because they did the honorable thing. They were going to indict either Andrew and Sal, his 2 sons, or both of them. And he goes, no, I'll admit the whole thing's a ruse. Leave my kids alone. This is a man of men, honor. Talk about the old school men of honor, right? Because this doesn't exist anymore. But old school men of honor, Chin was one of them. Now, you could say he killed people, he did this, he did that. I mean honor according to the honor of his life. He lived according to what he believed his values were, and he lived up to them. Unlike
Chin was the most, everybody, again, I'm going down a rabbit hole here, but everybody that I guess that I would say that doesn't know the granulars, that just kind of know the sketches. Oh, John Gotti this and John Gotti that. The Chin was the most underrated godfather of the second half of the 20th century. And the whole, everything that he did was calculated. There was a method to his madness, his power, his reach, his understanding and adherence to the rules. He did everything the right way in that
world. And that feeds into what you just said feeds into what I was just going to say. So Sammy testified that they met at this commission meeting. If it even happened, let's pretend it did. Once again, if it happened, he said, Chin said to me, I put a lot into this crazy act. I've been doing it for a long time. I don't need to take a pinch or get caught on surveillance, come into the meeting and blow it all. I said to Rita, when I read that, I go, do me a favor, Rita. I know your whole family. I slept in that house. I used to sleep there on weekends. Chin's real house was in Old Tapan. He lived with his mother on the west side.
Right.
I used to sleep in the house in Old Tapan. I says, look, I know your whole family, and I know your father through you. She talked about her father with me my whole life.
Yeah.
Would your father ever, and I know things that I can't even talk about on this, would your father ever entrust somebody with that kind of information? She said, never. Never would he say that to anybody. He wouldn't even say it to us. He'd be afraid that there's somebody's going to pick it up.
Right.
If he was in the apartment and he would say something lucid, his mother would be listening. She'd be knitting in the corner, his mother. And let's say he's having a conversation with you. You're in the apartment and he's acting a little wacky, but now he goes for a couple of minutes and he sounds a little lucid and he sounds normal. His mother would say, Medicine, Vincenz. And she'd grab the medicine bottle and throw it at him and say, take your medicine. Because she's telling him you're not allowed to talk normal. So why you think he would ever say to Sammy, I'm doing this for 30 years. I don't want to get caught, Sammy. A guy he just met. He don't know him from a can of paint. But he's going to say this to Sammy. Of all the people, it's bullshit. So that's where Sammy will tell anything he has to say, whether it's to kill somebody, whether it's to get out of jail, and whether it's entertainment now. So here's my proof. Once again, the kid emails me and goes, did he lie? He's a liar. He's a liar. He goes on a podcast, Sammy, the balls. That same kid asked Sammy, Louis Ferrante says you lie a lot. Do you know Louis Ferrante? He says, yeah, I know Louis Ferrante. I beat the shit out of his father years ago in Brooklyn. His father was a big steroid freak, and I gave him a beating when we were with the Rampers, and that's why the kids got an issue with me. Okay, rewind. Hold on a second. My father never stepped foot in Brooklyn his entire life, number one. My father, if he was alive today, he'd be 92 years old. Sammy's 80. My father was 12 years older than Sammy. So when Sammy was running with the Rampers when he was 12, he was beating up muscle-bound steroid 24-year-olds. Right. That's what we're supposed to believe. My father never had a fight in his life and never took steroids and never worked out. He's a legitimate guy. My mother's side was crooked. I've been through that before, but my father's side was straight as an arrow. My father, even straight, would have hit him over the head with a Snicker bar and sent him home. There's no way. There's no way. So he made it all up. And you know what he ends with? He ends with the same thing he ended Joe Watts' thing with. He's a bitch, meaning me. I'm a bitch. I did my time, buddy. I never took shit from nobody. I never backed down from a fight. I never backed down from time. I don't care if I faced life. I sat there. That's the reason why I was between Vic and Joe. And Joe was facing life too. And so was Vic. we were all facing life. So that's all bullshit.
Give me
yeah, no, I was going to say one other thing. So it was a total lie. And the other thing I want to say is when people want to chime in, I thank the people that have left comments and they say, I know Lou. I was away with Lou. He was a great guy. He was respected, and I loved him. John Farisi, thank you. Patty Faricelli, I read your thing. Thank you. There were guys that don't know me and never did time with me, and they go, I was away with him. I slapped him. I beat him up. Nobody did nothing to me. That's fake names, trying to play yourself up. You're probably a rat, or you're jealous of me, or you're making it completely up. But I just want to get that out and get that across, because Sammy once again lied. And this time he lied about my father, may he rest in peace, saying he beat up my father, and that's why I'm talking shit about him. That's not the case. My father was never beat up by Sammy the Bull Gravano. I promise you. I'm glad we
got all that on record. As we finish up, any parting words about Joe the German and just the legacy that he leaves? And like I said, that they don't make him like that anymore. And in terms of what he had to work with in not being a full-blooded Italian, this guy rose as high as you could rise, had the respect, borough to borough, was an earner, and a guy that I think was one of these dual threats, the brain and the brawn. And then you had the factor that everybody liked him. So you have it's the trifecta that it's very difficult to have in that world. But when you have it, it can take you to meteoric heights.
He had a personality like none other. He was a gem of a man. Like I said, generous, kind-hearted, unless you cross him. I know people are going to go, what do you mean kind-hearted? Kind-hearted to his friends.
Right.
If you cross him, that's your business. That's you may have what you got coming. If you're his friend, there's nothing he won't do for you. He was a sweetheart of a man. Unlike what Sammy says, he was never a rat. There's no way he was a rat, and it's disgraceful that he said that. And he knows better. He knows he wasn't a rat. No way. The two agents who were accused, supposedly he said they came to visit, they denied that they ever went to see him.
Yeah.
Never happened.
Let everybody know where they can consume your books and your content.
Yeah. So I write a lot better than I talk because I'm still Queens, kind of the accent. I can't get rid of it. But I write a lot better. I studied history. I had to become a historian before I ever engaged in history and wrote a history. You could buy the Borgata trilogy anywhere. Go to Amazon. Read it. There's a lot of information about how the mob was formed. This is stuff I never knew when I was on the street. I learned this I became an avid reader. I've read thousands of books. I love reading and I love writing. It's about the rise of the Mafia in Sicily and how it carried over and crossed the ocean and came to the United States. If you're interested in that, Volume 1. Volume 2 gets into the Joe Colombo hit. It gets into Jimmy Hoffa, which you're an expert about. And I've quoted stuff that you've done, and you're in my reference notes, Scott, you are the authority on Hoffa. I go into the Gallo Wars and how Joe Gallo was killed. I go into the Kennedy assassination and how Carlos Marcello and Santo Trafficante orchestrated the hit. They were the hub of the conspiracy with Sam Giancana playing a role as well. Yep. But those guys were the main thrust of that conspiracy. Did the government do it too? 1,000,000%. Yeah. The government had everything to do with it. They were working with the mob, just as they were trying to kill Castro.
Yeah, we're in lockstep. We're in lockstep on that.
Totally. We discussed it. Yeah, lockstep. So it's all in Volume 2. Volume 3 will be the fall of the mob, and that's going to be sort of how and why it went to shreds. But it's a lot of blood and guts and intrigues, because now all you have left is Machiavellian intrigues. It's no more. They had all the unions. They had the garment industry. They had the construction industry. They had everything locked down. They had all the waterfronts, the ports. Now they start to lose it. And they start to lose these things. And when the pie starts to shrink, the people, their talons come out. And they start fighting with each other. And they want to kill each other. And that's why you get a guy like Sammy Gravano who wants to kill DB and take over the union from DB. He wants to kill Louis DeBono and take over that construction business that DeBono's got. He wants to kill all these guys and take what they have because he doesn't have the head or the opportunities to go out and forge those paths himself. And that's what left, I think, the mob in disarray. And that's why it goes to shit.
Lou, this was awesome. I'd keep you on longer, but my computer's about to die.
No. I think we did over an hour, actually.
Yeah. This was great. Lou, thank you so much. You're always welcome on the OG Pod. You are a true OG. Please go check out Lou's content. I'm glad we were able to talk about Joe the German. We were able to dispel the notion that he was some type of cooperator coming from Sammy the Bull. That was a part of this, and we just wanted to celebrate Joe Watts and then let everybody know about Lou and his remarkable work, not just as a thief, but also as a historian and author and expert. And he is really the poster boy for how you flip it. You turn it around and you go from being the bad guy to being the good guy and living your best life in your second chapter. We got nothing but respect. Thank you, Lou. You're always welcome back.
Scott.
Original Gangsters Podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe. Uncovering the underworld, one city, one region, one country at a time.